Like I said, welcome to the Atlanta Radio Club, our July 1st, 2021 meeting. And we have a great program for tonight. We're going to throw it to Stephen real quick, our repeater manager. He usually has to step out, so he's going to give us a quick update. I believe he had asked to do that. So Stephen Slider, go right ahead and take it away and tell us about repeaters.
All right, so the repeater has been performing absolutely wonderfully lately. We still get some static bursts every once in a while, but that's to be expected in a high RF site like we have. I renewed the W4 DOC call sign, so we are good to go on that for another 10 years. And I think the next steps are just working on documentation and hopefully getting some more people involved. And that's really all I have.
Okay, and of course, we're still working on an issue with the D-Star repeater that is located, the equipment that's located on top of Stone Mountain. We're hoping to finally get up there here shortly and make contact with it and figure out what's going on and hopefully fix or replace what needs to be done. So hopefully that'll be back up and running soon. That's the D-Star. So bear with us on that. And thanks, Stephen. And thanks for all the work that you and your team have been doing so that we can have some good Sunday night nets without some of the problems we've had last year. Not COVID related, of course, but anyways, I'm going to hand it off to Rob and our wonderful, brilliant activities or program chairman, and he's brought us another great program tonight. So I'm going to hand it off to him and let him take it away.
It's easy to get great programs because there are great people out there, and we have a, you know, as I say, we're not just stuck with people, in Atlanta. We have national experts. So in our series of great programs, yeah, we've got Bob Wilson this month. I've seen him. I think I saw you at, we would contest you or one of those, and excellent. And I saw that and said, we've got to get you for the club. And the 13 Colony contest is coming, started, as John said. It's a 7-day contest that started today, where you're supposed to make a contact in a station of all the original 13 colonies. And I'm going to try and work digitally. So this is going to help me get make sure I get my hookup going for digital. And yeah, this should be great for anybody who wants to get their computer talking to their radio. So this is going to be wonderful. So I'm going to turn over to Bob. And Bob, thanks for agreeing to be here. And it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. You should see the slides in full screen.
Yes.
Okay. And hopefully, does this work? Yeah. All right. So quick overview of the talk today. A little bit about the legacy serial ports that we had in the good old days, and then USB ports and how they replaced them, USB to serial adapters especially. How to use the Windows Device Manager. That's a key to managing your serial ports. And also how you can use serial ports with modern radios or even older radios for doing CW, PTT, and FSK keying, and a bit about sharing serial ports, and finally sum it up with some stuff about using the USB sound cards that are built into modern radios these days. So in the old days, we had these type of serial ports. There was a 25-pin connector from the very first serial ports, and then they shrunk it down to the 9-pin. The 25-pin allowed for 2 ports to work, and the 9 allowed just 1. But I call it a DE9, not a DB9. That's technically correct term is DE. It refers to the shell size. The size of the shell here is DE. This is a DB size shell, so this is a DB25 female. This is a DE9 male connector, as you'd find on the back of an old PC or an adapter. In the old days, life was really simple. There was just one serial port on your radio and one on your PC, or maybe 2, a COM1 and COM2. And you just connected a straight cable straight across. Unfortunately, Elecraft and ICOM didn't agree with the ASU and Kenwood in terms of what connector gender to use. The Elecraft, I think, properly used a female, so it ICOM on just 2 of their rigs. And then Yaesu and Kenwood, unfortunately, chose to use male connectors on the rig. Generally, the connector should be male on the PC and female on the rig, but they went the opposite route. So whatever cable works on your Kenwood won't work on your Elecraft without something called a gender changer. But it all works the same, and it was easy. But then they improved the computers, so-called, by getting rid of the real serial and parallel ports. Although you could still buy a modern computer, if you desktop anyway, where you can add a real legacy serial port, and I recommend doing it to simplify life. But in any case, you can use USB to serial adapters. So when those ports went away, the problem is a lot of radios and a lot of devices that want to listen in on the serial port traffic, such as rotator controllers, step-IR antenna controllers, some band decoders, some amplifiers. They all want to listen in on the serial port traffic. They can't listen in on the USB port traffic. So we still need to deal with our 9-pin connectors. Common solution is to provide USB to serial adapters. So basically, there's lots of different kinds of USB ports. There's also USB-C, which is a round connector. It's not pictured here. But in almost every PC, you'll find at least one type A connector, and the radio will generally have a type B square connector. It might have a type A also, where you can put in a memory stick or so on, but that's not the one you connect to the computer. The blue or super speed indicator, which you might find on some USBs, indicates the type of the 3.0. The only radio I know about that has a higher speed USB 3.0 port on it is the IC7610, but it's not used for RAID control. It's used for digital data transfer and other things. So the blue is not for you on the 7610. So as far as USB to serial adapters go, there's a really wide variability in the quality and the compatibility of these. EdgePort, I'll show you some pictures, is very most compatible with everything. Does just about everything the old legacy serial ports did. And so compatible they can be opened at 45.5 baud for RTTY keying. Eltima is supported by microHAM interfaces and some other software. It also can be opened directly by MMTTY. Third place, I'd put the FTDI adapters. They're very good and stable. They're built into the Elecraft radios. They they do require an extra program for RTTY keying called EXTFSK, because they cannot be opened directly at 45.5 baud. And then Silicon Labs device drivers are built in to ICOM, Kenwood, and Yaesu rigs, and they also need EXTFSK. But there's one manufacturer out there that should be avoided at all costs, and that's the Prolific brand. The problem with them, as you'll see, is that they have issues. So I recommend uninstalling them and not using them. Here's a picture of the EdgePort 4. This is hard to find in a used market, though it shows up on eBay once in a while. Brand new, you buy them. I think the company is called Digi now. They are very expensive, but they're just one USB connector and 4 serial ports, and super compatible with everything. And Windows automatically finds and installs the driver. You don't have to do anything special to get them to work. They also make an 8-port version if you have a whole bunch of rotators you want to control, each with a serial connector. This is a good box for that. Ed Munn's W0YK has some of these used, still in stock. He ran out of his 4-port ones. He's bought them various places, and I think he can still sell you an EdgePort 8 if you're looking for one. Contact Whiskey 0 Yankee Kilo. StarTech has a similar product, but it has a separate 5-volt power supply it needs, and it uses FTDI type. There's 4 of them built into this model. There's 8 of them built into this model, and it also needs that 5-volt supply, unlike the EdgePort, which gets its power from the PC. The microHAM controllers, this is their fanciest top-of-the-line SO2R controller, the MK2R Plus. It just plugs into USB and provides an almost unlimited number of virtual serial ports, but only one cable to connect the serial port to your radio, as well as a CIV connection if you need that. If you want to get this box, unfortunately, costs over $600 or $700. Much cheaper if you just need a single port. I really like this Chippy X10. It's made by FTDI. It's one of the few adapters that the company that makes the chip also makes. So guaranteed to work. Very short connector, so you'd add a normal double female cable to a Kenwood, or male to female to another like an Elecraft radio if you needed it. Guillermo makes good ones. I don't really like their little plastic. Oops, I don't really like their little plastic shell here, but I haven't heard too many problems. They do have a ferrite over here, so right there. So that one has 2, and this one has 4. So you can get 4 ports out of one USB connector on a PC with only for $40 at the Guillermo. They're available on Amazon. Very easy to get. A lot of happy customers with those. And again, Windows does recognize the FTDI, just plug and play. If it doesn't, you can easily download and install their drivers, and then it will. I've heard that Macs don't recognize them automatically, but you can, again, install the driver for them, and then they do. Now, back to the Prolific. They are widely available. You probably find one online any day. They're always cheaper than the rest, but because a lot of their chips were counterfeited. So the official device driver may not work with them, or it may work for a while and it'll quit working. It's a frustration of everyone who's ever tried to use one of these things. There's no way to fix it. It's really a software issue with their driver. It tends to interfere with other device drivers on the system, and it should be, not only should you uninstall the Prolific, but you should uninstall the device driver for the Prolific as well. Can't really tell by looking at them, but if the ad doesn't mention that it's an FTDI chip, then it's probably a Prolific chip, and it should be avoided. So how do you connect it? Well, you just plug the FTDI straight into the PC. Same with Elecraft devices, which are FTDI or EdgePort. But in Windows, we'll usually locate and install the right driver and assign a COM port number to it, which you can discover in the Windows Device Manager. But something to note is that the COM port numbers can change. If you move the USB cable from one port on the PC to another, and it happens to end up on a different USB hub, because some PCs have maybe one internal hub, some have 2 or 3 internal hubs, maybe one hub for USB 2.0 ports and one other hub for USB 3.0 ports. So when you move that cable to a different connector, if it ends up on a different hub, it'll get a new COM port number, and you'll wonder why things aren't working. So, however, things are a little different if you want to connect a radio other than Elecraft by USB. It's very important to install the manufacturer's device driver first, and then connect the USB cable. This applies to all of the above. It's usually not required for Elecraft and FTDI. But it's also possible to recover if you got anxious and just plugged in the USB cable and got some thing in the device manager that says unknown device. You disconnect the cable, uninstall the unknown device, and install the driver, and then plug the cable back in, and things will start to work normally again. And you'll get a new COM port number like you're supposed to. You can also renumber the COM ports so that they're more manageable. And I'll show you also, you can label them in the device manager, although that's a trick. So here's a little lesson on using the Windows Device Manager. There's a couple of ways to do it. Probably one of the easiest ways is just right click on that Windows Start button, and then you'll see a long list of things and device managers in the list. My favorite way is to hold down the Windows key like a shift key, and then tap the letter R for run, and that brings up a run box, which you just type into the program you want to run. The first time you have to type this big long string in device management.msc, but from that point on, Windows remembers everything you've ever typed in that box, and it'll be in a drop-down list, so you won't have to do the full typing again, and it's sometimes a quicker way of getting to the device manager. So if you're running Windows 7 or Vista, or haven't read Windows 8 or something before Windows 10, you need to set a system environment variable. Probably not too many of you are running Windows 10, anything other than Windows 10 or a Mac or something. So I'm just going to skip these slides pretty quickly. They're in there for the reference if you have Windows 7 or XP or some older version. You need to set this environment variable. These next few slides explains how to get to the environment variable box, edit the system environment variables, go to the advanced tab, click the environment variables button, click the new button, and type in this exact name of this environment variable and give it a value 1. And then when you do that, then the device manager will show you hidden devices. If you don't do that on Windows 7 or earlier than Windows 10, you won't be able to use that. So even on Windows 10 and in all prior versions after setting an environment variable, you need to go and select View and then Show Hidden Devices. And you have to do this every time you reopen the device manager. It does not remember this check mark as a sticky setting, unfortunately. So when you do that, you'll notice that down here in my example, I've got, if I can point to it, I've got this grayed out little icon here. That means the device is reserving COM5, but it's not plugged in right now. The normal USB to serial adapters get their power from the PC. So even if the radio is off, it'll show as gray. It won't show gray, it'll show as connected, even if the radio is powered off. Some exceptions to that, like ICOM rigs where you turn off the big switch on the back, then they tend to go away. But the power normally comes to the USB port from the PC. So even when the radio is off, you'll see that as not a hidden device. So hidden devices are very useful to know about them. That's why I always turn on this option so I can see all the serial port numbers that are assigned and eliminate any conflicts. So once you've found this serial port that you want to manipulate, you right click on that and you go to Properties and you check on the properties to see what driver it is. In this case, I've got FTDI as the driver in the driver tab, so I'm cool. However, if it said prolific, then I would click uninstall device. And if I uninstall the device, there's one more box to check that says, do you want to delete the driver for this software? Yes, you do if it's prolific. You don't want that driver anywhere in your system. It'll interfere with all kinds of other stuff. But if it's FTDI, you're still not done. Go to the port settings tab and then click advanced. And then you'll see a dialog that looks like this. And the FTDI default options are not very good because they can key a radio if you turn on certain options that are very convenient in the radio menu. If you ever turn on a radio or turn on a PC or reboot it or plug in a cable and your radio is keyed 6 or 7 times, why is that happening? Well, it's because Windows is, for backwards compatibility, is looking for a mouse on the serial port. So it assumes that that's what the serial enumerator does, believe it or not. This is checked by default, which is bad. It means see if there's a mouse on the serial port, and if so, assign it. If it sees any data, it's going to not let you use the serial ports. You always want to uncheck this box. And there's one more box at the bottom that says disable modem control at startup. It also looks for a modem on the serial port. Now, I don't know how many people are still using dial-up modems these days, but you definitely don't need it with your rig and your FTDI adapter. So always, always for all FTDI, including the ones built into Elecraft rigs, you want to uncheck serial enumerator and check this box that says disable modem control at startup. That'll prevent the PC from keying the radio if you use the right options for CW and PTT keying over the serial port. There's also a way to disable this serial enumeration if you're using a legacy serial port. I had a friend of mine, W6YA, said I'm just using a legacy COM1 in my Elecraft K3 and it's keying the radio every time I reboot the PC or plug anything in. And it took me a little while to figure out where that setting was, but sure enough, there is a registry key that has set to serial enum. I don't think too many of you are using legacy serial ports, so I'll just skip quickly. But here all you have to do is rename this upper filter key. I always recommend taking a backup of your registry by creating a restore point, and then you can restore your system to that point if you get screwed up. In the device manager, there's this thing called the device instance path that tells you what string you're going to look for in the registry. And once you find that string in the registry, it'll be under this key, and you'll find for all legacy serial ports, like COM1 and COM2, there's this enum setting in upper filters. And so I right click on upper filters and I rename it to old upper filters, and then the serial port doesn't key the radio anymore. Except when you want it to. So that's the way to go if you have a legacy serial port. One more thing you need to do in the device manager to make sure everything works reliably is you need to find all the hub devices. You need to right click on them and go to properties and turn off this allow the computer to turn this off this device to save power. You definitely don't want your PC saying, oh, this hasn't had any communications for a while. Let me turn off the USB connection to your radio or your rotator or something like that. Don't let it do it. So on all the USB hubs, and you'll have to go through each one, be sure to uncheck this box because it is on by default. There is another tool that I'll show you one screenshot of called the USB device management tool. There's probably others. But this one is a little weird to download. You go to this web page, and then way down at the bottom under the feedback section is where they finally show you the link where you download the driver. Use the 64-bit one if you've got Windows 10 and a 64-bit system. That's not the driver, but the tool, the USB device view tool. Here's a screenshot of it. Looks kind of complicated, but it has some useful features. You can click on this column here, last plug, unplug date, and then you get a clue about what device you just plugged in and what COM port number it's assigned to. So it's another tool for the toolbox should you need it someday. So how do you manage your COM port numbers? Well, the trouble is that every time you connect a new radio or move it to a different spot or add some other USB serial device, the COM port numbers keep going up and up. And you might find some software like WinTest software doesn't support COM13. That's like the max number it can handle. So you need to renumber stuff so it's lower than 13 to use them. So I kind of like numbering my serial ports kind of left to right in the shack to match the station layout, just so things are kind of logical. You don't have to do it that way, but you can certainly renumber them sequentially and get rid of the gaps. So, have some predictability about what COM port number is going to come up next. So the first step is use the Windows Device Manager, and any of those stale devices that are no longer used, you threw them away long ago, but they're still holding a COM port number. You want to right click and uninstall those devices. You don't necessarily have to uninstall the driver, but you do want to uninstall the device so that it takes away the lock on that COM port number. Then you can right click on the remaining COM ports and use the advanced button and then renumber them as into a sequence that makes sense to you. So in FTDI drivers and others, you'll see a COM port number listed under the advanced settings. It's a drop-down box, and you can pick another COM port and reassign that COM port. Don't do it while a program is running or that COM port is open. Otherwise, they're going to tell you have to reboot your computer to have the setting take effect. Do it while all the programs are closed and then renumber your COM ports. Now, you notice on that other slide, there was a little in use flag. So what does that mean? It just means that that COM port number was assigned to some device, and it could have been a long time ago. It doesn't mean you can't use it when you're renumbering things. You might get a big warning message about it. I'll show you. But of course, if you uninstall the disconnected devices first, you won't see that as often. But it is usually safe to ignore this warning. This COM name is being used by another device, and don't use duplicate names. Do you want to continue? It's usually safe to say yes when you see this, but you won't see it if you're careful about removing all the old stale devices first. So here's a trick that I recently learned that is really handy to actually put on the COM port numbers the name of the radio or the amplifier or whatever is using that serial port, rotator, whatever. So I know just by looking at the device manager what COM port number is what. So how did I manage to do this? How did I get my K4 and KPA 1500 labeled this way in the device manager? Because normally it just comes up USB serial port. So to do that, you had to find the entry in the Windows registry again, where they store that name. And then I just updated that entry and the new name showed up. So the first step is to find this, again, this device instance path on the properties of the port. It's going to be this big long string, in this case, FTDI bus and this big long string. And it tells you the subkey 000 is where this the device instance path is. And then you go to this key in the registry, and you'll find that very same device instance path under FTDI bus. Here's the 000. And right here, there's a field that says FriendlyName, and that's got this default string, USB serial port COM3. So then you just change the FriendlyName to what you want it to be, right click on it or double click on it and modify it, change it to this value and click OK. And now when you refresh the device manager, this string will show up in the device manager instead of the default one. But something you need to note is if you renumber a COM port, Windows is going to change the name back to the default with the new number. So renumber your ports first, get all the numbers where you want them, and then start labeling them, and you'll be in good shape. Sometimes you end up in a situation where I can't open the serial port. I can't figure out who's using it. I tried it. My program says cannot open serial port. You know it's there. You see it in Device Manager, but you can't open it. So there is this tool from Microsoft called the Process Explorer, which you can download for free. And you want to run the 64-bit version as administrator. So you right click and say run as administrator. And then there's a search button in there. And if you search for the right string, you can figure out which program has grabbed a hold of that serial port. Unfortunately, all the device manufacturers use different strings. So you have to kind of know which one to search for. The hardware serial ports use SCR and also this Morty device that uses this chip. Silicon Labs one starts with SIL. Eltima and the VSP manager use VSER. So you search for this string or all these strings until you find out, whichever one's appropriate to your hardware, until you find out which program's using it. So how do you search? Well, in the Process Explorer, there's this binoculars icon, which means search. And when you click on that, you will get a search box and you type in that string and click search. And it shows you right here, in this case, that WinTest WT.exe has opened that device VCP0. I just searched for VCP and it found anything that started with VCP. And VCP stands for virtual COM port. And that case, now I know, oh, it's WinTest that's using the COM port. It must be running in the background. I can't see it. Similarly, another example, I found that OmniRig was opening the port. OmniRig is a port sharing program I will mention later. And it can be used by Log4OM or WSJTX or some others. And that's how you know that, oh, that program grabbed the COM port. You can't have two programs generally opening the same COM port at the same time. So sometimes you're just not sure what to search for. Maybe my list of strings isn't complete. But I know that if I open this program, it opens this COM port and this strange device driver that I have, and I don't know what it would be. So there is this funny find Windows process icon right here. And this thing here, you can actually drag that icon with the mouse and drop it on top of a window of a running program. And then when Process Explorer just jumps right to the process that owns that window. And then you know you're in the right process and you can see what devices it's using and figure out what to use. So once I jump to the right process, in this case, I jumped to the WinTest exe. It's kind of buried down here. I went view, lower pane view, handles. You only have to do that once. It remembers it. And then, though you can't see it, there's titles here. And every list you see in Windows like this, you can click on the title. It actually sort by that column. So I clicked on the second column and it's sorted by device. And I can see, oh, there it is, device VCP0. That's what looks like a serial port. It's also using the hard disk and other devices, but the one that virtual COM port, that's the one I want to look for. So now I know what string to look for if some other program has grabbed the COM port and I can't figure it out. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about keying your radio by the serial port. Maybe you guys are using WSJTX and you've set PTT via CAT. You can do it that way. I don't think it's the best way to do it because if your radio supports PTT via simple pin, it's easier to do it by a pin. It's just less work for the computer and the radio and everything to key. It'll key faster if you tell it what pin to use as opposed to what command to. Our keying circuit has been used for decades now to key a radio, both CW and push to talk, and even FSK, same circuit for RTTY. And how does it work? Well, in the COM port, they use DTR pin or pin 4. Data terminal ready pin is not used in in most radios. So you can dedicate that pin to keying this transistor. What happens is when this pin goes high, it turns on this transistor and that grounds whatever is connected here gets grounded. Same with the RTS pin. When this pin goes high, turns on the transistor, and whatever is connected here will get grounded. So that's how you can key your radio or key CW or key RTTY by just having your logging software turn the voltage on or off on the DTR and RTS pin. So Elecraft realized that people were building this circuit into E9 connectors and trying to squeeze a transistor and resistor inside the shell, and W1WEF built a bunch of keying interfaces that did that, that he sold commercially. But Elecraft said, we can put that inside the radio. We're not using those pins for RS-232 handshaking. So why don't we just put that keying circuit inside the radio? Then you don't need anything but a straight cable. So that's what happened in Elecraft, but you have to turn it on. There's a menu setting in the K3, config PTT-key, And if you set it to RTS DTR, then RTS corresponds to push to talk and DTR corresponds to CW keying. The default is off, off. And now you can tell your logging software to key CW by DTR and key PTT by RTS. And it works both with USB connections and with legacy RS-232 connections. I think I'm going to ignore that telephone. Oh, it's a one ring. It means it was a no more robocall. Thank you, no more robo, for canceling the robocall. So to prevent unwanted transmissions, as I mentioned before, you still have to, that's why you have to uncheck that serial enumerator and disable modem control at startup options, because once you turn on this feature, then it's possible for your PC to key your radio 4 or 5 times every time it boots up, unless you turned off these options. One thing I think I forgot to mention is a Windows update can often install brand new FTDI drivers and reset everything back to the defaults and turn these options back on. So after a major Windows update, or if you find yourself, hey, I turned this off and it's still keying my radio, go back and you'll find those options are turned on. Just turn them off again. You'll be good. Elecraft K4, which I'm privileged to have as a field tester, it has more serial ports. The USB gives you 2 virtual, and there's a legacy 9-pin one for peripherals. You can do CW, PTT, or FSK keying on all 3 in any combination. Here's a screenshot of the menu in the K4 where you tell it that on the first USB port, I want to do DTR. I want to use the DTR pin for CW, and I want to use the RTS pin for PTT. And the same as settings are available. If I scroll down for PC2, and above that, there's an RS-232 port. You can do it in any combination you wish. So there's no more conflicts between, like a program like N3FJP, it won't support CW keying and rig control on the same port. You get 2 with the K4, you're in business. Again, you need to change your FTDI settings if you're going to turn on these options. ICOM does the same thing, and they got a little smarter. They added FSK keying. The K4 finally caught up and added FSK keying. Same thing can be done over USB virtual serial port. All of these models of ICOM support this feature over their USB. Don't support it over the CIV cable. It's just got 2 pins. But the 705 and all these other models do support this type of convenient CW and push-to-talk keying. There is a limitation in the 7300, very popular radio. It just provides 1 virtual serial port. So it's a little hard sometimes to get a program like N3FJP to key CW on it, but there's a workaround for that. Now, the ones that support 2 serial ports, they show up in the device manager like this. Either they'll show up as 2, 7850 and 51, they show up as Silicon Labs. The 705, they label it port A and port B for you. I like to keep things simple. You can use any pin for any purpose, but to be consistent everywhere, I've sort of tried to push the standard of use the DTR pin for keying and use the RTS pin for push to talk. And why did I pick those? And I should mention that port B can be used by MMTTY exclusively, so there's no conflict. And that works except for the 7300. Why did I pick those letters? It's sort of a mnemonic trick. The letter D as in DTR is right next to the letter C as in CW, and it's very close to the letter F in the alphabet for FSK. So I remember those are next to each other. So I'm going to use DTR for CW and FSK, and the letter R for RTS is close to P and S in the alphabet. S is send is what ICOM or was it Yaesu use instead of push to talk. So that's how I remember D for CW, R for PTT. It's a little tricky in some of the ICOM radios to determine which is port A and B. Usually they'll be numbered sequentially like COM5 and COM6 when you first connect the cable. But if you had gaps and, not a clean sequence of serial ports in your device manager, you might find that port B got assigned to a lower number than port A. So the only way to figure out which is to, again, go to the details tab of the COM port and look at the device instance path. And you'll see at the end a letter A or a letter B. And that tells you, in this case, that COM5 is the A port, the one used for read control. You can't use B port for read control, only for keying. The 7300, I'll go through all these models pretty quickly because there's a lot of detail here for reference purposes. they have this menu item where you can set connectors. You can say, I want to do CW keying on the DTR pin, and I want to do, or I can do RTTY keying on the DTR pin. Can't do both. And then I want to do send or push to talk on the RTS pin. So in the logging software, and I'll show you a picture of that in a second, you would say do CW on DTR and do push to talk on RTS. The same would happen in WSJTX. You can tell it do push to talk by RTS pin. Again, it's more reliable in my view than using CAT, although both can work. And for MMTTY, you'd have to use this external driver for RTTY. But there is a problem with the 7300, and that is it only gives you one and just one serial port. And so you can't give that port to both MMTTY and to your logging software, or you can't use that port and only that port with N3FJP if you want to do keying also. So the trick there is to get a CIV, use the CIV connector, which acts like a second serial port on the 7300. There are cables that are equivalent to the CT17 interface, and then you do rig control on that, and you can do CW keying on the USB connector, and you still get the sound card. 705 fortunately gives you 2 ports, and doesn't give you a CIV connector, which is kind of the first ICOM rig I've ever seen that it's going to be incompatible with a lot of amplifiers that want to listen in on the CIV connector. Again, there's a menu setting for port A and port B, and you can assign them to CW or RTTY keying. I'll skip through the rest quickly. They're there mostly for reference. The 7610 supports CW and by a little slightly different menu settings. The 7850, again, they use different names. I don't know if anyone has a Yaesu FT991. It also supports what they call an enhanced and a standard COM port. When you connect the cable, you get both. There's the enhanced, there's the standard. You would use the enhanced one for the rig control and the standard one for CW and PTT. And here are the menu settings. It's important you can turn off this RTS handshaking if you want to use the RTS pin.
Yeah, the FT891 is the same.
891 is the same as the 991.
Yeah, as far as having enhanced and standard.
Okay, thank you. So the Yaesu one is a little different. They also call it enhanced and standard, but in this case, and you do logging by enhanced and PTT via standard. There are all these radio menu settings for that. 890 is covered here at Kenwood TS 890. In this one, the logging software is supposed to use standard instead of enhanced. So it's the opposite of Yaesu. So you have to learn that the hard way. But here are all the menu settings to turn on these type of keying over the USB cable. So what about the logging software? Well, I assume if you guys are doing any contests at all, you're probably using N1MM contest software. You go into the configurer and you have your radio port selected. You want to use the same COM port, but you need to check this CW other box right here. And then click the set button. And on the next screen, you have this option to turn CW and PTT on these pins. The old N1MM defaulted to always on for these 2 pins. That's not a good default. I've asked them to change it. They might have changed it by now. That means your radio key as soon as you start N1MM up. You don't want that. So change the menu first, and then go ahead and, change the N1MM menu first, and then go in and change the menu of your radio to turn on those keying things. Otherwise, this thing was set to always on. It would just key your radio key down as soon as you started the program. And that's not very cool. If you have 2 radios, you can actually specify that radio number 1 uses this keyer and the other radio uses the other keyer. So you don't need a Win key. It seems to be a common fallacy that was spread long ago that you can't send decent CW because of Windows timing issues. That's just not true anymore. It was true in the old days of N1MM, and N1MM Plus, they made it a lot better. Windows 10 made it a lot better. PCs are a lot faster now. But there is an option that you have to check to make sure that your CW keying is not messed up timing-wise. Same with RTTY keying, and I'll show you that in a second here. WinTest, a very similar dialog for turning on CW and push to talk. Write log is a little more complicated. I don't have a slide for that. I'm not sure if any of you use write log, but it also supports software generated, they call it, CW and push to talk. So how do I get the timing to be right? How do I prevent Windows timing issues from sending bad CW or bad read? Well, the default for all laptops that have this little battery icon on there is for this slider to be about 2/3 of the way, right about here. And they're doing that to save energy and battery power. But if you slide that slider all the way to the right where it says best performance, now the CPU won't slow down and you'll get better CW timing, a lot better. So that's if you have a notebook PC with a battery. If you have a desktop PC, it's a little more complicated. You have to go into the power, you have to go into the power options and create a power plan. And you may not see high performance listed, but if you click create a power plan, then you will see it listed and you can pick it. And the high performance plan, which this says favors performance, may use more energy, is going to work better than the balance plan in terms of CPU performance and CW and RTTY timing. So PCs are plenty fast enough these days to send very, very good timed CW and RTTY without the need for a WinKey or MORD or external hardware, although people like to sell those devices. For any of you guys who are still into RTTY at all, this is the technique for enabling that type of keying. You go to the TX tab and you have, unless you're using an edge port with a keying circuit, you need to turn on this EXTFSK. Some say use 64. I've found that sometimes the EXTFSK works just as well and puts less load on the CPU. So you can use either one. You do want to click that button that said command. Did I zoom in on it? Okay. So let me go back one screen. Right here, this radio command button. You want to click that and clear out all these settings. You don't want this port to be grabbed and get any more conflicts for that. You're not going to use radio commands, which is like a software PTT here. And you're not going to send any commands to the radio. So you just check the group clear here and make sure this is all blank. Then you go to the miscellaneous tab, make sure COM-TXD is set because we're going to do FSK keying. We're not going to use the sound card for RTTY keying. You do have to click once this USB port button and make sure that limiting speed is set. That's the only options you have to do, and it remembers that. And now you can do very good RTTY keying, assuming your menu is set. After you click all those buttons and say, okay, a new pop-up message, pop-up window is going to appear from the EXTFSK software. And this is where you tell it what pins to use for FSK keying. Again, I prefer setting DTR for FSK and RTS for PTT. I've been told that on some Yaesu rigs, well, I don't think you need to check invert down here. One thing you can do is just call CQ and see if you get spotted by the reverse beacon network where there's lots of RTTY skimmers that should hear any CQ within propagation distance and let you know right away if you're keying upside down. So generally, you do not have to check the invert box. What about sharing serial ports between two programs, or what about conflicts between serial ports? Well, the way the wiring of a serial port works, and it's the same when you're using USB, is there's only one transmit data line. That's what TXD stands for, from the PC to the radio. That's pin 3 and a 9-pin connector. And only one of those can be connected. You can't put two transmitters on the same antenna and transmit at the same time. So therefore, unless you're using a diplexer or something, but you similarly cannot connect two PCs to one radio and have them both try to send signals on the TXD pin at the same time. Just doesn't work. So only one device can connect to pin 3. The PC will send a command and poll the radio, like what frequency you're on. I'll send that command on pin 3, and the radio sends its response on pin 2, which is the receive data line. There's a way for a radio to automatically output data whenever you move the knob. That's called auto info mode. It's a menu setting in the K3. It's also available in Kenwood and Yaesu rigs, but they don't have a menu setting for it. You have to turn it on with a command. And as soon as you power the radio off and on, the command goes off. So it's not very useful on Yaesu and Kenwood radios. But the nice thing about the RxD line is you can have many listeners, just like you can put many receivers on an antenna and have no conflicts. You can put many devices on the RxD pin, such as step-IR controllers, baby loop controllers, band decoders, all the Elecraft, ICOM, and SPE amplifiers. They can monitor the data that's coming back from the radio on the RxD line and going to the PC, they can sort of sniff on that, peek at it, if you will. And then they know what frequency the radio is on, and they can be controlled automatically and automatically track the tuners and other things to the frequency of your radio without you having to transmit at all. There's a difference, however, in the RF kit amplifiers. They need to pull the radio themselves. So they need both pins 2 and 3 connected. So you really need an independent serial port as available on the K4 or the Kenwood rigs to make that work. If you don't mind a shameless plug in the middle of this talk, I did create a box to allow sharing of the RxD pin between multiple devices and also provide keying circuits. I call it the serial box or S box. Here's what it looks like top and bottom. It's got 4 RCA connectors for keying circuits or other, so you can tap any pin you want. It allows you to share that serial port between devices without any special software needed. And as mentioned, it has 4 NPN keying circuits like that schematic I showed you before built in. So if you have one of these older radios listed down here that do not support CW and PTT keying over their serial port, well, you just put the one cable through my box, route it in and out my box, and then I tap those pins, and you can do the same kind of fancy CW and PTT keying over one USB cable or one USB to serial adapter that you can do on the radios, the more modern radios that support that feature built in. So what about sharing serial ports by software? There's a lot of programs out there that claim to do it. And that's sort of, they create virtual serial ports that map. One of the first to do it was VE3NEA's OmniRig software. And it's a nice program because it works with a lot of software. There's a long list, but unfortunately, N1MM and N3FJP decided not to support it. So the way OmniRig works is OmniRig owns the COM port. All these programs talk to OmniRig, and OmniRig is the traffic cop and makes sure that only the data requested by one program goes to that program, and there's no conflicts, and multiple programs can talk to the radio at the same time. As I mentioned, there's no collisions or conflicts between applications because OmniRig knows all the commands. You just say the software sends one common. It sort of isolates the software from the proprietary commands that each rig has. There's a rig INI files that people have written, including me, for OmniRig to support any radio that's out there. So you don't need to wait for your logger to support the radio. But you cannot do CW, PTT, or FSK keying through the OmniRig port. There's another program out there, the N4PY Pegasus Plus. It allows sharing a COM port with up to 5 other applications. I didn't mention it here, but Win for ICOM, Win for Yaesu, Win for Elecraft, they also support serial ports. What about using an off-the-shelf serial port sharing program like VSPE or VSP Manager or COM0Com? Well, maybe you can use those, but I don't think they're going to be very reliable. There's nothing that I know about in these programs that make them aware of ham radio command strings. So they don't know when a command begins and a command ends. So a very long string sent to or from a radio could get all mixed up and bundled if there could be collisions in commands, and some commands could be ignored, cause errors. So I don't recommend using those to share between ham radio software. Fortunately, as I might have mentioned earlier, that there are radios that have both a USB connector and a 9-pin connector, a legacy serial connector. These radios do not, they have that, but they can only use one at a time. You have to pick which one you want to use. However, as the K4 and these others that I've listed, they have both types of connectors and they operate independently. ICOM rigs, so then you can connect one program to one port and the other program to the other port. Like WSJTX uses one COM port and N1MM uses the other COM port, and there's no conflicts. ICOM is got one USB cable, which might have 2 serial ports. You can try it, but only one can be used for read control. But they always have, except for the 705, the CIV port. And it can be used independently if you set this menu option, unlink from remote. Now the 2 ports operate independently. One program can use one, usually through a USB to CIV adapter, and the other program can use the USB cable. So that's in some how you would have two devices pulling the radio at the same time, maybe a PC and a step-by-wire controller or something. One using USB, one using the DE9 connector or the CIV connector. All right, let's talk now about sound cards. We're near the end of the talk here. When you connect a new radio by USB cable, you almost always will get a USB audio codec, which is a USB sound card. It's built into the radio, can be used for WSGTX and voice keying and all kinds of recording over the air stuff. But you might get more than one of them if you got more than one radio connected to your PC, and it can be a little hard to figure out which one's which. The other thing you have to realize is the first time you plug in a new radio, Windows is going to make it the default sound card for all Windows sounds and everything. Windows says, oh, you got a brand new USB to sound card. Let's use that as your new default. You don't usually want your radio to be the Windows default sound card. So you need to fix that the first time you connect the cable, go back to the sound card in your PC. So if you right click on the speaker icon and then open sound settings, you'll see a dialog that looks like one of these two windows. If your screen is wide enough, there'll be this link for sound control panel way over here on the right under related settings. Your window is skinny, then you're going to have to scroll down to find it down here. You want to click on sound control panel. There's a shortcut to that. Use that Windows key and run again, mmsys multimedia system.control panel. That's your shortcut to getting to this very useful dialog that's way more useful than this one. And it looks like this. It's got a VU meter over here, and it lists all of the sound cards in your system. And there's two tabs. There's a recording tab and a playback tab, and you need to manipulate both. So here's my USB audio codec. I already switched back the microphone array to be my default recording device. And how did I do that? I highlighted it and clicked the set default button. You don't want this green check mark to ever appear on your radio codecs. So you can then highlight that microphone and click properties, and you can then rename it. I'll show you in a sec here. But sometimes you might have more than one USB audio codec listed because you got 2 or 3 radios, maybe an external USB to sound card adapter. How do you tell which is which? Well, they'll disappear when you unplug the USB cable. So if you unplug the USB cable and you see one device disappear, and then you plug the USB cable back in and it reappears, okay, now I know which sound card belongs to that radio. Then you can use the properties button and you can label them with the device. So how do we do that? Right there on the general tab of the properties, that's where it'll say have a default like microphone. I then can go and label it microphone IC7610. Now I know which is which. And that name will show up in WSJT also. However, there's some issues with WSJT not refreshing the sound card list very well, but there's another trick around that too. Then you click apply, and you have to do it again for both the recording device and for the playback device, and label those sound cards. I like to click this change icon button right here, just so I know that it's a radio. I can change the icon. You'll get a list that comes up. This thing here looks sort of like a radio. I select that and click OK, and now it changes the icon from a microphone to something that looks like a radio. A little easier to spot in the sound control panel. So to summarize everything, these are the key points to remember for this talk. You definitely want to use the Windows Device Manager to manage and renumber your COM ports. You always want to get rid of prolific devices and drivers. You want to change the FTDI default options because otherwise they can key your radio. Even if you're not using that feature, you might turn it on someday. Try labeling your COM ports using the Registry Editor so you know what COM port goes to what radio. And give this CW, FSK, and PTT keying the virtual serial port pins. Give that a try. I think you'll find it's a lot cleaner just to have one USB cable to the radio instead of a separate WinKey box and a separate Morty keyer and all this other cabling. And again, just for mnemonic purposes, use that DTR for CW and FSK and use the RTS for PTT. And if you have any conflicts or sharing issues, you'll need to deal with those by software or by using multiple ports on the radio. And label your sound cards so you know which one is the radio and which one is something else. Here's some reference material. This is my QRZ.com page has a link to this talk in the presentation section. I mentioned the USB device view software and the Process Explorer software. And of course, there's the link to my serial box if you'd like to connect more than one device to the radio serial port and have auto tracking work or do CW keying. And then you can always email me at the standard ARRL address. Okay, that finishes the talk. If there's any questions or slides you'd like me to go over again, please go ahead now.
So I've got a question for you about sound cards.
Go ahead.
So this is the magic question. I have yet to find anybody who has figured this one out yet. But when you plug a new sound or a new sound card into Windows, is there any way to keep it from making it the default?
Nope, I don't
Didn't
believe
think so.
there is. But it only happens the first time.
But
So-
if you have, but if you have multiple radios and you're connecting and disconnecting all the time, it can be pretty painful.
It shouldn't happen more than once. Connect all the radios you have at once. Then go into the sound control panel, set both the record and playback default devices back, move that green checkbox back to the sound card in your PC that you want to use. And then you should be able to plug and unplug all those radios all you want, and Windows will not reset them.
As long
However,
as you use, as long as you use the same port, physical USB port, right?
it has to be on the same hub. So if you can actually move it to a different port as long as that port's on the same hub. How do you find out what hub it's on? Again, you look at that device instance path and it tells you. So you could play games and plug it in to every possible port. And so Windows records every possible thing. Always then set everything back to the sound card in your PC as your default sound card. And until you get a brand new radio or maybe a major Windows update, you'll have to go through it again. But I think you'll be okay as long as the device driver doesn't change and as long as the port, your USB port you're using doesn't change. So that's my best recommendation for that. Windows just stupidly assumes that every new sound card you plug in wants to be the new default. There may be a way around that, but it's going to be buried in the registry somewhere. The easiest way is just keep hitting that set default button so that Windows knows all about every device you could ever plug in and doesn't try to say, oh, I've seen that one before, I don't need to make it the default. That's kind of how it works.
Hello,
Thank you.
Bob. Oh, sorry, Jeff. Bob, so appreciate all your tips, and I've got an Elecraft here. I'm going to make some changes and play around with that a little bit. But I also use a Flex radio. Do you have any tips about the Flex and the SDR software that comes with it?
Well, Flex is very complicated. As you know, they have this smart SDR cat setting,
Right.
where you have to map various COM ports for various purposes. And they tend to conflict with hardware drivers that you'll install, and you go into Device Manager and you find the COM port numbers, or you got two COM port numbers assigned to the same thing. Just renumber the COM ports for the ones you can control using the Device Manager. Don't try to renumber the Flex COM ports that way. Use the Flex interface to number your COM ports that you want Flex to use. But if you plug in an FTDI device like your K3 and it comes up on the same COM port number that Flex is already using, just right click on it, renumber it to some unique number, and then Windows should remember that until you move it to a different hub. And then you'll have less conflicts. But you definitely don't want two radios on the same COM port number, two devices on the same COM port number. Even if one is not connected, it can cause issues. So get all the COM port numbers unique. That's my recommendation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Sure, Bob. Go ahead.
First of all, does Windows limit the COM ports? If you have, my Windows has 4 USB ports for connection, and I've got a 4-port serial adapter. Will Windows only show 4 ports for that one? Am I saying it right? 4 ports, regardless of where I plug in the USB?
It should. But again, if like 2 of your USB ports on your PC are USB 2.0 and 2 of them are USB 3.0 because they're blue and they have a different color or they have a super speed logo on them or something, then you might find that your first port you plug in that adapter. Is it like a Guillermo 1 to 4 USB to 4 serial cable, or an edge port, or FTDI or StarTech, or do you remember the manufacturer?
I have the one of the ones I'm using now is a Guillermo.
Okay, Guillermo is a good one, and that's got 4 serial ports on it.
Correct.
And
so if I get a second Guillermo, can I
Should be
get
fine.
another 4 ports?
Yes, sir. Should work fine. Should be no issues. If they're somehow get assigned the same COM port numbers, you can't, because plug both in at the same time. You can right click in Device Manager and renumber those COM ports using the Properties in Advanced button that was in my slides there. So I don't think you will get a complex, like the first time you plug it in, the first one, I assume you got something like COM 3, 4, 5, 6, unless you had other devices. When you plug in the second one, should be no problem. You should get COM 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay, thank you.
And if
next
you have any
question
issues,
is-
sure. If you have any
next
issues with
question
that, you can
is,
I can help you with it.
That the W0 Yankee Kilo, you
Yeah.
said he sells the 8-port edge.
He collected quite a few edge port boxes from eBay and other places, thought he would need them all, and then decided he didn't need them all. So now he's selling them. Last I heard, he had sold out of the 4 ports, but I think he still had the 8-port available. It's a beautiful box if you can get one. And I don't know what he charges for, but it's very reasonable, like maybe 50 or 60 bucks. I don't know
Okay,
exactly.
just email him.
Yeah.
Next question is, do the similar principles apply if you're using a Mac or Linux box?
Okay, Mac and Linux, they don't use COM1, COM2. They have different names under /dev and so on. And my experience with those, I don't know anybody who's plugged an edge port into a Mac, and I think it will recognize it right away. But if it doesn't, you can probably go to the Digi International website, download a driver, and then it will. So Linux, I think, is going to be the same story. If you get the edge port, same is probably true with FTDI. You know, the names come up differently. You have to look in the device directory /dev to see US /dev /TTY, usually something like, yeah. And if to sort of figure out, where it mounted it and how it worked. But it is possible. I mean, if you Google that kind of stuff, that's all over the internet and easy to find out. How do I make edge port or work with my Mac or my Linux box? It'll work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And if you have any issues or you need to get stuck, you can email me and I can do a team viewer session with you. We can figure it out together.
Oh,
So
great. Thanks a lot.
Feel free to email me if you get stuck with that. Good questions.
What's your email address?
N6TV@awrl.net. Pretty easy to remember. I do get a lot of email. I try to respond quickly, and sometimes the awrl.net forwarder fails and I never get the emails, but usually it works. So I will try to reply any issue comes up.
That's wonderful. That's Skip. I know Skip had a problem. You out there, Skip? You still have the problem? You mentioned it on Saturday.
Yeah. I sent Bob a chat message just because it's kind of long and complicated. But do you see it there, Bob?
Oh, I hadn't looked at the chat.
Okay.
Sometimes when I plug a device, Rig Talk CAD interface. Computer goes ding ding and the device shows up. Oh, under other devices. Yeah, when it sees other devices, it means I don't really know what the heck this thing is. So it usually means you have to install a device driver first. I don't know much about the Rig Talk CAD interface, but I do know that RT Systems and others created a USB to CIV. Valley Enterprises has one. It's an FTDI USB to CIV. Some of those devices, if it's just a USB cable and on the other end is like a 1/8" plug for the CIV connection, is that what you have there?
Well, it appears to have some circuitry in the USB plug itself.
Right. So, but the other end of the cable is just a CIV connector, just an 1/8" phone plug. So those devices are kind of tricky. They get their power from the DTR and RTS pins. You can't do CW over those. So you have to set your software so that RTS and DTR are set to always on. That puts voltage on those two pins, provides voltage to the circuitry that is needed to make a CAT to CIV connection. So if you finding it's not working, that's probably the reason. So turn on in your software, there should be a setting, it's in WSJT and others, for always on for those DTR and RTS pins. This is now not good if you're doing CW or PTT keying on them, but great if you're using it as an adapter. And if you do that, I think you won't, the device will be recognized properly because now it's getting some power that it can use.
Okay, I'll try that. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I assume it has some kind of device driver, but try turning on that option for that port. It's, you know, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. You kind of have to turn the power on in your logging software before you've even connected the device. So I think it will work. You might have to do things in a funny sequence. But again, make sure you got the right driver. Let's see. I don't think there's any other chat messages, but it was a good question too. I'll have to do a little research on that device.
It sounds like, well, we're probably going to need a follow-up program on talking about the different CAT connections and the USB codec, you know, showing people how to the logging software and your you know, whether you're using WSJT and getting that hooked up.
Yeah, I probably should have had a slide in there about making WSJT work, but it's sort of the same as the logging software. You put in the baud rate, it asks you what pin do you want to do PTT on, and you say RTS, and then you hit the test CAT button and it works or it doesn't work, and then you make sure you got the baud rate right. And then once you get the test CAT button going green, then you hit the test PTT button and see if your radio transmits. And if it does, you're good to go, except for the sound card stuff. You also, that's something we're talking about. WSJTX is not real good about recognizing when you rename a sound card. So there's sort of a trick there I've discovered to get it to refresh itself. You, let's say you had it all set up for USB audio codec, and then you went ahead and did the fancy thing and renamed it to IC7610 USB audio codec, like I suggested. Well, you bring up WSJT and it's too dumb to search for new sound cards. So it still shows USB audio codec and it can't connect and it complains and all this other stuff. Now, how do you fix that? Well, you unplug the USB cable and then you bring up WSJT and then it can't find that thing. And so it clears its list. And then you close WSJT and then you plug the USB cable back in. Now it's got the new name. And then you start WSJT and oh, now it sees the new name. So that's how you get full WSJT into clearing its sound card list is unplug everything, start it up, let it clear out its list because it can't find anything but your sound card in your PC. And then when you plug the exit it, start up, plug in the cable, start up WSJTX again. Now it'll see the new name and use it, and you can select it. Now that's a trick there. Yeah, it's a whole other talk about WSJT. I think JTDX has the same interface, but I haven't used it.
Yeah, I'll try for FT8. That's what I'm using for FT8.
JTDX?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has the same kind of radio and audio interface panel as WSJTX, I assume, where you tell it the COM port number and the sound card to use and stuff like that. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the software that, like the SSTV, like slow scan from the space station. It's hooked up the same way. It's hooked up through the codec, and
it's just sound card stuff. Yeah. That's why I kind of like FSK RTTY. It's just an on-off keying. There's no sound card stuff except for the audio coming back, but the transmit part, you don't have to worry about overdriving it or a speech compressor being on, or am I in USB mode or data mode and all this other stuff. I like RTTY's simpler that way for FSK keying. All right.
Anybody else out there? This is your chance for questions.
I saw Jim working on his computer there. Did you fix whatever it was? Did you check it out yet?
No, not yet. I'm tinkering around, looking at what's available in the 13 colonies thing. So probably once we're done here,
Oh, okay.
I'll jump on and nab a few colonies.
Okay. I think the Radio Amateurs of Canada contest is also on RAC. Maybe that's CW only. I'm not sure. So
It's
there's a lot
busy
of
here on 40 tonight. So that's a good thing.
yeah, a lot of VEs. Boy, the band scope during field day was something to behold, wasn't it? Just wall to wall, especially on 40.
I was doing 40 in the evening and I actually using my flex. I turned down the attenuation on my antenna just to clear up some of the signals because there was so much coming in. I couldn't hardly work anybody.
Yeah. It's a
Brag,
lot of signals.
brag.
First world problems.
Yeah. What I understand is 6 meters is a real problem in Europe because there's so many close by stations that are super loud. So you need a good front end on 6 meters and when you're in Europe, apparently.
Did you
All
see-
right. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just going to say for the 13 colonies, they've got a station in, it's the 13 colonies on the East Coast plus the UK, Philadelphia, and now France. They got 3 of them. So hopefully we'll hit that on FT8.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you,
Any
Brett.
other questions? I'm happy to take it. General nature. Anybody got a question about the Elecraft K4? Nope.
Other than it's a great radio.
It's a good radio now. It's going to be greater as they keep improving with the software. Just like I think they're, I don't know. I've heard that Flex has sort of stopped improving their software because they're focused on military customers now. That may or may not be true, but or maybe it's government customers. But Elecraft doesn't do that. They're strictly the ham market. They didn't want anything to do with the military or government contracts or anything. They just wanted to do radio for hams, and so they're focused on hams. And I think that's a leg up they have.
They're working on a K4S.
K4S. Well, the S, the S is the K3S and the K4S. There's no K4S. The K3S has essentially been, it's the baby, stepchild, or the grandfather, I don't know how to look at it, of the K4D, the dual receiver model. There is a third model they've announced called the HD for high dynamic range, and that one will have a superhet filter and roofing filters and have better field day type performance where you've got multiple stations on the same band. That's where you'd want the HD model and its roofing filters. Otherwise, the receiver performance is just a little bit better than the 7610 because they use the same architecture essentially. So
And that'll have the same price as the Flex.
well, it's going to add another probably $1,000 to the price. I haven't figured it out yet, but a lot of it's depending on part supplies and that stuff. I think that's a year off or more, the HD model, but I've been using the D model, the dual receiver, and it's fine. And they've improved even that performance lately with an SDR tweak. So Rob Sherwood has measured it, and NC0B on his receiver performance test data. You can now find the K4 in the table, and it's in the top group. It's not the top one, but he's just sorting by one value, and there's so many other factors. I mean, the K3 with its roofing filters comes up higher than the K4D in the table, but the audio quality of the K4D is way better than the K3. So you can't measure everything by one number. I really like the audio quality in the K4s. No hiss, no hum. It's just clean, pure CW notes. I'm a CW guy, and pilot performance when you're listening to a bunch of stations is so much better in the K4 that giving up a little close and dynamic range, it's worth it to me.
Yeah, we should be able to see that at the next HamFest. When
They'll have a K4 there.
No.
Yeah. Oh, you mean when people are on the air?
No, I mean just see the unit and learn about it at the HamFest.
Well, if any of you guys find yourself in the San Francisco Bay Area and like to come down to a station and listen to one, just let me know.
Thank you.
Free demo. Okay.
No earthquake that time. Guarantee no earthquake.
Well, we can try to arrange for one of those too if you want. Little one. All right, guys. Anything else you'd like me to talk about?
Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I'll sign off. Feel free to email me if you get stuck or have questions or want me to team viewer in and work with you. We can work that out.
Thanks a lot. We're really helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you again. Have
Thank
fun.
you, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bob.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Where's my hand? Oh, there.
All right. Got a little bit of club business to take care of real quick. Just real quick, join us tomorrow at Mellow Mushroom in Brookhaven for our Friday lunch. We have started that back. That's right across from the Brookhaven MARTA station. I believe it's off of, that's considered Peachtree Industrial in that area.
12:30.
12:30 until 2. And then let me draw for the door prize here. It's a gift certificate to HRO, and our winner tonight is Mike Rourke, W5TSU. Are you still around, Mike? Yep.
Here you are.
You can use that at the Atlanta office. You'll have to, I guess, if you want to purchase something, contact them and work with them to get that shipped to you. So I'll email the certificate to you. Congratulations on that. That'll help buy something for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, good. And thanks to everybody that came out for field day. We had a great time. I think Bob NZ2Z has agreed to give away his chair he left there for tonight's second round.
I had to go to the beach yesterday and sit on the sand. We'll catch up. Are you going to Mellow Mushroom tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be at Mellow. You coming to Mellow Mushroom?
Okay, maybe I'll see if I can.
I'll bring it with me if you're there. I'll have it
come
with
there,
me.
so throw it in your car.
Yeah, it's a nice chair. I sat in it today for a little while. So.
It passed the test.
Anyways, the biggest thing for tonight, of course, elections are coming up in August. So I've asked Jim in for BFR to do the election committee again. So I'll give him just a second to give the spiel that he normally gives the last couple of years that he's done it. Thank you, Kathy and Dick.
All right,
Jim.
Thanks, John. Yes, John said it's election time. We're a little behind where we normally are. Usually we announce the committee in June and any slates in July. I am just started putting together the committee, so I should have it announced via the email and thus in the next day or so. But we will put the committee together and then we'll announce all the slates on the floor at the next meeting, and we'll hold the vote as well. So stay tuned for that. And if you have a slate you're putting together, you can get in touch with me, Jim at n4bfr.com works, or n4bfr@arrl.net works as well. So however you want to do that. But let me just say it again, the too long didn't listen is if you want to run for election, get in touch with me. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Jim, for agreeing to do that. It was my fault with all that was going on. I forgot to get that thing rolling in June, and thanks to Rob, he reminded me. So thanks, Rob, on that. If you have any interest in participating in the Atlanta Radio Club in any form or fashion, we've got plenty of things to do, activities, repeaters, so on and so forth. So if you have an interest in one of those items, being involved in it, putting together a field day or working on the Ham Fest, please do contact me so that we can get you on and get you working. So we'd love to have everybody that comes to these meetings have some role in the club every month. So throughout the year. So please do contact me. You can just hit president@atlantaradioclub.com and I'll get back to you on that. I don't have a whole lot more. Of course, the 13 colonies is this week, so get on and have fun with that. And do any of the other board members have anything that are here? Nope. Okay. We've had several memberships over the last couple of months. A lot of them are the first year new ham type membership. So of course, membership is it's not all at one time where it renews. Your renewals are on your join date. So if you're not sure about when you join, and when your dues are due, you can contact aide at treasurer or secretary at atlantaradioclub.com, and he can let you know when your renewal date is. We'll probably be sending out some cards shortly just to remind people that who have renewals that are coming up over the next couple of months. So it's a big thing to support the club because it helps pay for things on the repeaters, activities, and so on and so forth. So it's important, and I appreciate every bit of money that your dues and any other donations that you make to the club. They're all important and help make this club a success. So thanks again, Rob, tonight for another great program, as always. And do we have something for August other than the elections night for a program?
I need to talk to you about that and see if you want one. The spectrum monitor people want to present in August.
Okay.
If you want to have a,
I think that'll be fine. So stay tuned for that. There'll be an actual newsletter coming out for the August meeting. So hopefully after August, we'll continue to have a monthly newsletter hit your email boxes too going forward. So we're getting out of COVID and kind of getting out of our slumber on some of that stuff. So thanks for bearing with us. Anybody got any questions about anything?
I do have one comment.
Okay.
If you buy from Amazon, I would encourage you to participate in the Amazon Smile program. Basically, if you buy it through, there's no difference as a purchaser except that you connect to Amazon Smile instead of Amazon Regular. And what they do is it's a sharing thing where for whatever you buy, they contribute a percentage to your favorite charity. And I would encourage you to make the Atlanta Radio Club your favorite charity. It doesn't have to be. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But we've gotten, I think it's over about $300 from that. It doesn't cost anybody a cent. They don't charge more for merchandise on Amazon Smile.
it comes out
it helps the club.
pocket. Right.
That is all.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. And of course, if you're in town, please do join us tomorrow, 12:30 at Mellow Mushroom Brookhaven for a great beer and pizza. And if we don't see you again before next August, y'all have a great time playing on the radio, and keep an eye on the Facebook page and the website for upcoming activities as we add things to it. So if anything, nobody else has any other questions, y'all have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next event, next lunch, or next meeting.
Oh, I always throw something in at the end. We recorded this, and the video of this meeting will be available in a couple of days on YouTube, and I'll send out the information on it when we get it uploaded. So all of our videos are on there. I always say that right at the end.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good evening.
Hi, folks.
Good night, everybody.